Hello there, YouTube. My name is Wendy, but please call me Wendy, and welcome back to Read With Me, the wonderful fun series where we sit down, we read, and we just kind of let go from the entire day. I don't know about you guys. I am exhausted. Then again, I'm always exhausted, so there we go. Anyway, we are going to be I'm just going to jump on and right into the video. We are basically here to do one thing and one thing only, that is read. Yes, we are reading chapters 9 and 10 of War Storm. This is the fourth and final book in the Red Queen series. It is by Victoria Aveyard. Last we left off, we saw from Iris's point of view. Iris is the princess of the Lakelander kingdom. If you don't remember, now she's queen of Norda. But, she and Maven met with Bracken, in forms of Bracken gave them the information they needed, and Iris, of course, kept it to herself. You know, she was like, I'll take it, you know, because she wanted to be the one really in charge of that situation, as we'll call it. And then, from Mare's point of view, in chapter 8, we, got to see... Okay, so it was this dinner party scene, basically, and there's a lot of very funny moments. I shouldn't be laughing this much, but it's like I said, both back in the video and in the description of that video, that's honestly one of my favorite scenes. Stuff was falling on my desk, what the world? Anyway, that was like one of my favorite scenes, just because it was so well done, so funny. Oh my goodness. But then their dinner party got interrupted because of raiders. So we're going to find out more about that, I believe, in the next chapter. So let us go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to bring the mic closer. Here we go. Alright. We are going to be doing chapter 9, obviously. And chapter 9 is Mare's point of view. So, here we go. Alright, chapter 9 with Mare. I said no more surprises, I hissed to Davidson, following close on his heels as he leads us through his palace. Farley marches next to him, her hand resting on the pistol at her hip, as if she expects raiders to start popping out of the closets. The silver members of our party are just as on edge. Annabelle keeps their ranks tight. She repeatedly slows Tiberius, nudging him back behind a protective wall of loyal guards from House Laurelin. Evangeline is better at hiding her fear. Her face the usual twist between sneer and smirk. She has 2 escorts of her own. Sam's cousins, I think. Her dress changes quickly, reforming into scaly armor as we weave through the halls of the Montfort Palace. The Premier looks over his shoulder when I speak and surveys me with a withering glance. The bells and alarm echo strangely in the hall, dance around his words. Mare, I can hardly control the whims of raiders, and I do not schedule their attacks, frequent as they may be. Excuse me. I hold his gaze and quicken my pace, hot anger pulsing through my veins. You don't? It wouldn't surprise me. I've seen kings do worse to their own people in exchange for power. Davidson turns steely and presses his lips into a grim line. A sudden flush spreads across his broad cheekbones. His voice drops to a whisper. We had a whisper, yes. Or we had a warning, yes. We knew they were coming. And we had enough lead time to make sure the outskirts were protected. But I resent the implication that I would spill the blood of my own people, risk their lives, for what? Dramatic effect? He hisses, his voice deadly as a knife edge. Yes, this presents an opportunity for the Scarlet Guard and for Kalor to uphold their ends of the bargain, and to prove some before we go to my government and beg. But it is not a trade I'm happy to make, he snaps. So sorry about this really weird cut. I had to double check something really quick, so we're going to continue on. I'm going to briefly go back a line or two. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. Yes, this presents an opportunity for the Scarlet Guard and for Kalor to uphold their ends of the bargain, and to prove something before we go to my government and beg. But it is not a trade I'm happy to make, he snaps. I'd much rather be sitting out on the terrace getting pleasantly drunk with my husband, watching overpowered children sneer at each other, than do this. I feel scolded, but also relieved. Davidson glares at me, fire burning in his golden eyes. He's usually so serene, unflappable, impossible to discern. His strength lies not just in ability or charisma, but in well-practiced calm that few can see beyond. Not now. Merely the suggestion of any betrayal, however small, to his country has him incensed. I understand that kind of loyalty. I respect it. I can even almost trust it. So what are we going to do? I ask, satisfied for the moment. The Premier slows, then halts, turning his back to the wall, so we can see all of us. It stops everyone short, crowding the wide passageway with waiting reds and silvers. Even Queen Annabelle looks on Davidson with grave attention. Our patrols reported raiders crossing the border an hour ago, he says. They usually head for the towns down on the plain, or to the city itself. I think about my parents, my siblings, and Keylorn, either sleeping through the noise or questioning it. I don't want to fight, not if it means leaving them behind and in danger. Farley catches my eye, and I see the same fear in her. Clara is upstairs too, tucked into a crib. Davidson does his best to assuage us? Assuage. The alarms are cautionary, and our citizens know it, he says. Accident is well defended from attack. The mountains alone provide enough protection to keep most assaults to the plains or low on the eastern slopes. They would have to climb into our town teeth to get within striking distance of the city. Are the raiders particularly stupid then? Farley asks, trying to bluster away her concern. She doesn't take her hand off her gun. A corner of Davidson's mouth lifts, and I think I hear Carmody cough yes into his hands. No, the Premier replies, but they are very keen on optics. Attacking the Montfort capital is somewhat of a habit for them. It wins favor among their own, as well as the prairie lords. Tiberius lifts his chin. He shifts slowly, edging in front of one of his guards. I can tell by the tightness in his shoulders that he hates being hemmed in like that. Hates being anywhere but the front line. It isn't in Tiberius' color to ask another to do what he won't, to face danger if he doesn't. And who are they, exactly? You've all asked about Silvers and Montfort, Davidson says, his voice loud enough to carry over the warning alarms. You wonder how they lived this way, how we changed things decades ago. Some Silvers agreed to join freedom, to democracy. Many, I should say. Most. He clenches his jaw. They saw what the world should be like, or they saw the world beyond, and decided it was better to stay. Easier to adjust. His eyes land on Evangeline, and for some reason she flushes under his scrutiny, almost hiding her face. Some did not. Old Silvers, royals, nobles who could not stand our new country. They fled or fought their way to the borders. North, south, to the east, north, southwest, to the east. In the empty hills between our mountains and prairie, they formed bands, attempts at their own lands and lordships, always fighting, gnawing at each other and us. They live as leeches, feeding on what they find. They do not grow anything. They do not build. They have little holding them together but anger and dying pride. Excuse me. They take transports, farms, cities, in both Prairie and Montfort. They focus on red towns and villages mostly, on those who cannot defend against Silver onslaught. They move. They strike. They move again. And so we call them the Raiders. Carmody tisks loudly. He runs a hand over his gleaming purple-black skull. So far to fall for my Silverkin, for nothing more than pride. And for what they think is power, Davidson adds. His eyes land on Tiberius. The exiled prince straightens, setting his jaw. For what they think they deserve. They'd rather lose everything than live beneath the people they think are lesser. Idiots, I curse. History is marred with people like that, Julian offers. Resistance to change. But they make those willing to change all the more heroic, don't they? I reply, letting the words land as they should. Tiberius doesn't take the bait. Where will they strike? He says, never moving his eyes from Davidson's face. The Premier grins darkly. We've received word from one of the towns down on the plain. Raiders are close, he says. Your Majesty, I believe I may get to show you the Hawkway after all. No palace is complete without an armory. Davidson's guards are already there, suiting up throughout the long room stocked with weaponry and gear. They don't pull on the green coveralls, the uniforms I've been accustomed to, but tight black suits and high boots. Good for defending against a night raid. They remind me of what I used to wear in training. My purple and silver striped outfit to make me as a child of House Titanos. A silver through and through. A lie. At the door, Annabelle puts a hand on Cal's arm. She pleads with her eyes, but he moves past her, firmly but gently pushing her away. Her fingers trail on the edge of his red cape, letting the black brocade run through her fingers as he escapes her grasp. I need to do this, I hear him murmur. He's right. I need to fight for them if they'll fight for me. No one else speaks, and the silence falls thick as a low cloud. All I hear is the shuffle of clothing. My dress puddles around my ankles as I quickly pull the suit up over my underclothes. As I move I shift, and my eyes lock on familiar muscles. Tiberius faces away from me too, his shirt discarded, the suit tight around his waist. I trace the length of his spine, noting the few scars along otherwise smooth and sculpted skin. They're old, older than mine. One in training in a palace on a war front that no longer exists. Even though the touch of a healer could erase them quickly, he keeps them, clicked in scars as another would medals or badges. Will he earn more scars today? Will Davidson keep his promise? Part of me wonders if this is a trap for the true Kalor King, an easy assassination disguised as a real threat. But even if Davidson lied about not harming Tiberius, he's not an idiot. Removing the older Kalor would only weaken us, destroying a vital shield between Montfort and the Scarlet Guard and Maven. I keep staring, unable to stop myself. The scars might be old, but the almost purple, bruise-like mark where his neck meets his shoulder, that's new. Only a few days old. That's mine, I think. Gobbling around a memory both close and infinitely far away. Someone bumps my shoulder, jolts me out of the quicksand that is Tiberius Kalor. Here, Farley says gruffly. A warning. She hasn't discarded her dark gray uniform of command, and she stares down at me. Blue eyes wide. Let me. Her fingers zip up the back of my suit with speed, tightening the ensemble around my frame. I shuffle a little, adjusting the thick woven fabric of my two lawn sleeves. Anything to keep my attention away from the exiled prince currently shoving his arms into his own suit. Nothing in your size, Burrow? Titan's deep drawl offers a well-needed distraction. He leans up alongside us, back braced against the wall with one leg stretched out. His suit is the same as mine, albeit better fitted to his trim form. No lightning insignia, no markings, no indication of how deadly a man this new blood is. With him around, I realize Davidson has no need to arrange useful accidents to remove opponents. He only needs Titan. The chilling thought is somehow a balm. This isn't a trap, at the very least. It doesn't need to be. I slide on my boots, smirking. I'll have words with the tailor when we get back. Across the room, Tiberius rolls his sleeves, exposing his Flamemaker bracelet. Evangeline looks almost bored at his side, her first toss to the floor to reveal the full armor covering her from fingertips to toes. She catches my glance and holds my gaze. I don't expect her to stick her neck out for anyone but Elaine Haven, and yet I feel safer with her around. She's saved me twice before, and I'm still of value to her. Our agreement still stands. Tiberius must not win the throne. The room clears as we prepare, moving from the changing area to the rows and rows of arms at the back of the room. Farley weighs herself down with ammunition, putting a pistol on her other hip and a snub machine gun across her back. I assume she already has her knives tucked away. I don't take any weapons, but Titan grabs a belt, pistol, and holster off the rack. Shove them toward me. No thanks, I grumble, begrudging. I don't like guns or bullets. I don't trust them, and I don't need them. I can't control either one the way I can control my lightning. Some raiders are silence, he replies. His voice is like a whip crack. His voice a low whip crack. Just a thought turns my insides. I know the feel of silent stone all too well. It isn't a sensation I would like to bear again. Not for any reason. Without warning, Titan fastens the gun belt around my waist. His eyes and fingers quick on the buckles. The gun slides into its holster, feeling heavy and unfamiliar at my side. If you lose your ability, he adds, it's best to have a backup. Behind us, the temperature rises, a rippling heat that can only mean one thing. I look up just in time to watch Tiberius shoulder by, keeping his distance, fervently intent on staring at the floor as he goes, trying to ignore me. He's getting jealous. Trying to ignore me. He might as well wear a sign around his neck. Careful those hands, Titan. He growls over his shoulder. She bites. Titan just chuckles darkly. He doesn't need to respond, and doesn't attempt to. It only incenses Tiberius further. For once, I don't care about the scarlet flush heating my cheeks. I step away from Titan, who is still laughing. Tiberius watches me as I catch up to him. His brown eyes alight with something more than his usual fire. Electric energy pulses through my limbs. I keep it in check, using it to fuel my resolve. Don't be such a possessive ass, I snap, driving my elbow into his ribs as I stalk by. It's like hitting a wall. If you insist on calling yourself king, you can at least act like one. Behind me, He lets loose something between a snarl and a frustrated sigh. I don't respond, don't look back, and don't stop until I follow the steady current of soldiers outside onto the central plaza where we first arrived hours ago. Black and forest green transports crowd the stone. The vehicles fanned out evenly. Davidson waits by the lead, Carmody at his side. They embrace quickly, touching foreheads and kissing, before Carmody backs away. Neither of them seems bothered by the impending skirmish. This must be a common occurrence. Or they're very good at masking their fear. It could be both. The palace overlooks the growing number of soldiers and shadows move on the balconies. Servants and guests alike. I squint, trying to find my family among the silhouettes. Jesus Harris should stand out, but I spot Dad first. He hunches over a railing, leaning out to watch. When he sees me, he tips his head, but only a little. I want to wave, but it feels silly. And when the transports rev to life, their engines growl across the pines. I know that calling to them is no use either. I find Farley at the lead transport, waiting alongside Davidson. She clambers inside, hoisting herself up and into the raised vehicle. These transports are different from the ones I'm used to. Their wheels are much bigger, almost my height, with deep treads for the rocky, jagged mountain terrain. The rest of the body is reinforced, piped with steel, and decorated with many handholds, toeholds, and dingling straps, for obvious purpose. Titan jumps up, scrambling onto the back of the lead. He links himself to the frame alongside another Montfort soldier. The straps connect to their waists, giving them enough slack to lean, but not enough to bounce. Other soldiers, with all kinds of blood, do the same across the transports. Without their insignia, I can't tell for certain, but I assume they are the best shots, with both bullet and ability. Premier Davidson holds the door, waiting for me to join him inside the transport. Something hungry and wild drives me to do the opposite. I climb up next to Titan, tying myself in on his right. One corner of his mouth lifts, the only acknowledgement of my choice. The transport behind us is for Tiberius and Evangeline, the guards flanking the vehicle in unmistakable colors. I watch as Evangeline halts, one foot on the step up. She looks, not at me, but back at the palace. At Carmody waiting by the grand entrance, arms crossed, his white suit glowing in the floodlights. Annabelle stands nearby, a few feet distant, on the edge of impolite. She raises her chin when Tiberius appears, striding across the plaza with long steps. Without his colors, he seems like all the rest, a soldier with orders to answer to. Fitting, that's who he thinks he is. Just another person under his father's command, obeying the will of someone dead. Again, we lock eyes, and something in both of us burns. Despite everything, his presence feels like safety. No matter what, he chases away any fear I have for myself. Of course, that only leaves fear for the people I love. For Farley, for my family, and still, always, for him. A settlement down on the plain is at risk, calling for aid on the other side of the mountain. There isn't time to go down the slope and wind around through the valley. So, we go over it. There are roads above the palace, weaving high into the pines. We scream over the steep landscape, beneath branches so tight they obscure the stars. I lean flat to the transport, afraid of being dashed into an overhanging bough. B-O-U-G-H, I think is how I say that. Okay. Soon the trees are gone entirely, and the earth beneath our transport turns rocky. My head tightens, my ears popping like they do during jet takeoffs. Snow blocks the sloping ground, gathering in hollows at first, until it blankets the final peak. My exposed face goes red with cold, but the suits are special made, keeping me warm. Still, my teeth chatter, and I wonder exactly what possessed me to ride on the back of the transport rather than inside it. The tip of the mountain looms above, a white knife against the sky pin-pricked with blazing stars. I lean back as far as I dare. The sight makes me feel small. My balance shifts, marking the descent. Snow sprays in our wake, then rocks and dirt, kicking up a cloud of debris to follow the transports down the eastern slope. My stomach plummets as we approach the tree line again. The plain stretches out above the pines, endless and dark as an ocean. I feel as if I could see across 1,000 miles, back to Lakelands, to Norta, to Maven and whatever he has in store for us. Another hammer will fall soon, but where? On who? None of us can say yet. We plunge into the trees, the transport bouncing over roots and boulders. There are no roads on this side, only barely cleared paths through the arched branches. My teeth rattle with every bump, and the restraints are clearly bruising my hips. "Call to it," Titan growls, nudging up against me so I can hear him over the roars of engines and howl of wind. "Be ready." Excuse me. I nod, steeling myself. The thrum of electricity is easy to pull. I make sure not to draw from the engines around me, but on the lightning only I can summon. Purple and dangerous. It thunders under my skin. The massive pines thin, and I glimpse starlight between their needles. Not above, but beyond. Out. Forward. I shriek, pressing myself against the transport as it skids. Turn a hard left onto a sudden, smooth road along the cliffside. For a terrifying moment, I think we might spin right off the mountain and plummet into the darkness below. But the vehicle holds firm, tires catching the road, as one by one the other transports follow, hard drifting over the paved way. "Easy," Titan says, eyes flickering over my body. Purple sparks are running up and down my skin, responding to my fear. They burn off harmlessly, flickering in the dark. "There wasn't a better way to do that?" I mutter. He barely shrugs. Hewn stone arches across over the road at intervals. The structure's smooth cut, in alternating curves of marble and limestone. Each one is crowned with a pair of carved wings, the feathers etched deep into the rock to surround blazing lights illuminating the path. "The Hawkway," I breathe aloud. A worthy name for the road as high as hawks and eagles fly. In the daylight, it must be astounding. The road zigzags back and forth down the almost cliff-like mountainside, precarious with sharp switchbacks. This must be the quickest way down to the plain, and also the most insane. But the transport drivers are infinitely skilled, hitting each razor-edged corner with precision. Perhaps they are all silks or a New Blood equivalent, their agility translating to the machines they drive. I try to stay vigilant as we tear down the Hawkway, on the lookout for hostile silvers hiding in the rocks and gnarled trees. Lights on the plains come into focus. The few towns Davidson mentioned dot the landscape. They seem peaceful, untouched, and vulnerable. Excuse me. We're rounding another switchback turn when something like a scream pierces the night. The sound of tearing metal, shredding at the seams, shrieks around us. I look up to see a transport falling, tipping and knocked over and over, knocked out of its place halfway back the line. All seems to slow down as it comes into blinding focus. My senses narrow into the transport spiraling in midair. The Montfort soldiers on board fight with their restraints, hoping to beat gravity. Another, a strong-arm, grabs to the road's edge. It slips through his fingers, the pavement cracking beneath his touch. The transport continues to fall, spinning on its axis. It can't be an accident. The trajectory is too perfect. Excuse me. It's going to flatten us. I barely have time to duck while my own transport lurches beneath me. Our brakes squealing, trying to stop in time. Smoke burns from the tires as the brakes lock up. The road jumps when the transport smashes down, and we smash into it. Titan grabs the back of my suit, yanking me upward while I snap my arms over my restraints, using my electricity to cut through the thick weave. We scramble forward as Tiberius and Evangeline's transport smashes into our rear, pinning us between the fallen vehicle and theirs. More screaming breaks and resounding crashes echo behind us, one after the other, a chain reaction of twisted engines and burned rubber. Only the last transport in the line, 6 or so, are saved from the onslaught. Transports are saved from the onslaught. They're able to brake in time to save their machinery. I look back and forth, ahead and behind, not sure where to go. The fallen transport lies on its back, an overturned turtle. Davidson is already out of the lead, stumbling toward the soldiers crushed beneath the vehicle. Farley moves with him, gun ready in her hand. She drops to a knee, training her sights on the cliffs above us. "Magnetrons!" Davidson roars, one hand raised for aid. He pushes out a palm, forming a clear blue shield along the deadly edge of the road. Somehow, Evangeline's already at his side, her hands dancing. She hisses as she races the heavy transport off the road, revealing twisted limbs and a few flattened skulls, seeping brain like popped grates leaking juice. Davidson doesn't waste time, lurching forward to pull survivors from beneath the floating transport. Moving slowly, Evangeline lowers the transport again. With a twitch of her fingers, She rips off one of the doors, allowing those inside to tumble out. The soldiers are bloody and disoriented, but living. "Get out of the way!" she snaps, waving them back from the transport. When they do, limping out of her path, she slaps her palms together in a resounding clap. The transport does as she wills, crushing itself into a dense, jagged ball the size of one of its doors. She lets it drop with a crack. Only the glass and the tires fly in every direction, beyond Evangeline's metallic control. One tire rolls down the road, and out of sight. I realize I'm staying up on my pinned transport. Evangeline turns around, her armor reflecting the starlight. Despite Titan next to me, I feel exposed. An easy target. "Get the healers up here!" I shout, looking back along the line of the crushed vehicles piled beneath the arches. "And get some more light on the road!" Above us, something flares, a rising beam like the sun. The work of shadows, no doubt, manipulators of light. It sends harsh light and harsher darkness dancing across us all. I squint and clench a fist, sparking some electricity of my own around my knuckles. Like Farley, I keep my eyes on the rocky ledges rising all around us. Rising all around. Okay. If the raiders somehow have the high ground, if they're above us, then we lose a great advantage. Tiberius already knows that. "Eyes up! Sights on the cliff!" He shouts, his back to his transport. He too has a pistol in one hand, while his flames twist around the fingers of the other. Not that the soldiers need such instruction. Anyone with a gun has it raised, fingers ready on the trigger. We just need a target. But the Hawkway is oddly silent. Quiet except for the occasional shout and echo as orders pass along the line. A dozen or so Montfort soldiers work their way down the zagging road, silhouettes in their black suits. They stop at each transport, using their abilities to pull apart the mashed vehicles. Magnetrons and strong arms, or the new blood versions of both, or of each. Evangeline and her cousin stomp by below, focusing on extracting my transport from theirs. "Can you fix it?" I call down. She just sneers as she forces the twisted metal to slither apart. "I'm a magnetron, not a mechanic," she grunts, shouldering between the racks. Suddenly, I wish her camera in her tool belt. But she's far away, out of danger with her brother back in Piedmont. I bite my lip, brain buzzing. This is a blatant trap, an easy one, leaving us vulnerable on the mountainside. Or just stuck here, while the raiders wreak havoc on the towns below, if not the city behind us. Tiberius is thinking the same thing. He hastens to the edge of the road, looking down into the darkness. "Can you radio your settlements? They need to be warned." "Ahead of you," Davidson barks back. He crouches over one of the wounded soldiers, holding his arm while a healer works at the man's broken leg. At the rear side, an officer speaks rapidly into a communications gear. Tiberius frowns, turning from the cliff back to the carnage. "And send word back to the city. Call it a second detachment. Drop jets if they can get here in time." Davidson barely nods. I get the feeling he's already done that too. But he holds his tongue, keeping his focus on the soldier beneath him. Healers, half a dozen or so, work diligently down the line, tending to anyone injured in the massive wreck. What about us? We can't stay up here for long. I slide off my vehicle, landing gently. It feels better to be on solid ground. Something tipped that transport. Excuse me. Still on the roof, Titan braces his hands on his hips. He looks at the zagging road above, investigating the otherwise empty spot the first transport fell from. Could be a small charge mine, detonated at the right moment. They could flip a vehicle. "Too clean," Tiberius growls. He paces along the road, his entire body on edge. His Lordland guards follow him a little too closely, almost catching his heels. Coordinated. Someone's up here with us. We need to get down before they strike again. We're sitting ducks. Sitting ducks on the edge of a cliff, Evangeline adds. She kicks at her own transport in frustration, putting a solid dent in the already crumpled front. We can get the working transports up front. Load them as much as we can. Tiberius shakes his head. It's not enough. It's something, I snap at him. We're only a few thousand feet up now. Some of the regiment can start running. Get to the ground, Davidson says, helping one of the soldiers limp away from the head of the line. His communication officer follows, still jabbering into her radio. The outpost at Golden Grove has transports. It isn't far from the foot of the mountain. On the ground, Farley whirls, lowering her gun in her haste. You want us to split up? Not for long, Davidson replies. She pales, rising to her feet, but long enough if, he asks, if this is a trap, a feint. You got word from the towns that raiders were close, but where's the attack? She gestured to the black horizon. There isn't one. Not out there. Davidson frowns. Eye shifting. Not yet. Excuse me. Or they didn't plan to attack at all. They wanted to draw us out of the city, Farley says. Catch us on the cliffs. You said yourself they fight for their pride, and the city is too well defended. This is a hell of a way to get valuable targets out in the open. The Premier steps up to her, his face grim and stern. Then he puts a hand on her shoulder, squeezing a little. A friendly, if apologetic, gesture. I won't leave my people out there alone because we might be in danger. I can't do that, General Farley. I know you understand my position, he sighs. I expect more of a fight from Farley, but she drops her chin, almost nodding. She chews her lip and says nothing more. Satisfied, Davidson looks over his shoulder. Captain Highcloud, Captain Vaya, he calls. 2 officers in their black suits step forward, ready for their orders. Take your units down. Hard march. All speed. Rendezvous at Golden Grove. They salute in response, turning to gather their soldiers. As the 2 units group near the headed line, Tiberius winces. He hastens to the Premier, clasping his arm. Not to threaten him, but to beg. I know what fear looks like on Tiberius Calor, and I see it in him now. Leave the gravitrons at least, he pleads, in case they decide to blow us off the mountain. Blow us all off the mountain. After a brief moment of reflection, Davidson clicks his teeth. Fine, he says. And your highness, if you wouldn't mind, he adds, turn to face Evangeline. Those transports aren't going to climb over this mess without help. Use the gravitrons too. They'll make quick work of you. She eyes him with steel annoyance, unaccustomed to taking orders from anyone but her father. Still, she sighs and trots off to do as he wills. What about me? I ask, planting myself between Tiberius and Davidson. Both of them jolt, forgetting I was even here to begin with. Stay vigilant, is all Davidson offers, shrugging. Unless you can lift a transport off the ground, there's not much any of us can do right now. Helpful, I growl in my head. But the frustration is with myself. My ability is meant to destroy. It has no purpose right now. I'm useless. For the moment. So is Tiberius. He watches Davidson stalk off, his communications officer in tow, leaving us standing alone. Our backs to the wrecked hulk of my transport. Adrenaline and electricity still course through me. I have to lean against the metal. My fingers knotted together to keep from twitching. I don't like this, Tiberius mutters. I scoff, scuffing my new boots on the road. Stuck on a cliff, half the soldiers gone, transport's ruined, raider attack imminent, and I didn't get to finish my dinner. What's not to like? In spite of our circumstances, he grins, his smile crooked and familiar. I cross my arms, hoping he can't see me flush in the dim light. He stares at me, his eyes an intent, burning bronze as they trace my face. Slowly, his lips fall, and the smile fades as he remembers our decisions, our choices. But his stare remains, and I feel fire rise inside me, rage and want and regret in equal measure. Don't look at me like that, Tiberius. Don't call me Tiberius, he shoots back, dropping his gaze. I laugh bitterly. It's the name you chose. To that, he has no response, and we lapse into uneasy silence. The occasional shout or metallic groan echoes across the mountainside, the only sound in the empty darkness. Excuse me. On the zagging road above us, Evangeline, her cousins, and the gravitron slowly leapfrog the all-terrain vehicles, moving the wrecks behind the transports that can still function. Davidson must have told her to preserve all the wrecks she could, or else she could just crush them all to dust and let the rest roll through. I'm sorry about before, in the armory, he says after a long moment. He keeps his eyes on the ground, head bowed in shadow, but not enough to hide the cold flush across his cheeks. I shouldn't have said that. I don't care what you said. I care about the intention behind it. I tell him, shaking my head. I don't belong to you. I think anyone with eyes can see that. Can you? I ask sharply. He exhales slowly, as if gathering himself for a fight. Instead, he turns his head to look down at me. The glowing lights of the Hawkeye cast jagged shadows across his face, emphasizing his cheekbones. It makes him look old and tired, a king for years instead of days. Yes, Mare, he finally says, his voice a low rumble. But remember, it wasn't just me. I blink. What? You chose something over me, too, he sighs. Many things. The Scarlet Guard, the Red Dawn, the hope of a better future for the people I love. I bite my lip, chewing my own flesh. I've nothing to deny. Tiberius isn't wrong. If you two are done, Titan says loudly, leaning down from his vantage point on the transport. I think you'd both be interested to know there are people in the trees. I suck in a breath, tensing up. Tiberius puts out a hand quickly, touching my arm in light warning. Don't startle, he says. I'm guessing they have us targeted. Metal groans, and I jump beneath Tiberius's fingers. His grip tightens, but it's just the transports being moved. How many? I ask through gritted teeth. Try my best to mask my fear. Titan looks down at me, eyes bright. His white hair gleams in the artificial light illuminating the hallway. 4, 2 on each side, at a good distance, but I can just feel their brains. Next to me, Tiberius frowns, the corner of his lips curving downward in distaste. 50 yards, maybe. I look past Tiberius, and he looks past me, both of us searching the shadowed pines as furtively as we can. I can't see anything beyond our own circle of light. Not the gleam of eyes or the flash of steel down a gun barrel, nothing. I can't feel them either. My ability is nowhere near as strong or as focused as Titan's. Farley catches my eye and approaches with a hand on her hip, the other still clutching her pistol. You three look like you've seen a ghost, he says, sweeping her gaze back and forth. Snipers in the trees? She offers, as if she's asking about the weather. Did you see them? Titan briefs. No, she shakes her head. What's it? But it's what I do. You can drop him, right? I ask, nudging Titan's boot. I remember the Electrocons taught me about his ability. Brain lightning. Titan can affect the electricity in a person's body. The tiny sparks inside our brains. He can kill anyone without knowing, without any trace. He frowns and furrows his dark brows, a sharp contrast to his dyed hair. I might be able to from this distance, but only one at a time. Excuse me, he says, and only if they are raiders. Tiberius scowls. Who else would they be up here? I don't enjoy killing people without cause, Kalor, Titan replies, and I've lived on these mountains my entire life. So you'll wait for them to shoot us? The prince shifts slightly, squaring his shoulders so that I'm sheltered on one side. Titan doesn't budge. As he speaks, a breeze plays up, carrying with it the strong, sharply sweet scent of pine. I'll wait for your Magnetron princess to tell me if they're holding sniper rifles or not. On the one hand, I agree with Tiberius. We're exposed up here, and who else will be waiting in the trees, waiting for us to scramble? But I understand Titan, too. I know it is to pour lightning into a person, to sense their nerves sparking off and dying. It feels like a small death of your own, an ending you can never forget. Get Evangeline, I mutter, and tell Davidson. We need to be sure. Next to me, Tiberius huffs, but he doesn't argue. He pushes off the transport, intending to stalk after Evangeline. The breeze strengthens, playing across my face. Pine needles brush my skin, soft as trailing fingers. I try to catch one, but it dances off on the growing wind, and it sprouts before my eyes, a sapling growing in midair. It spears a soldier before any of us can react. The attack is not the storm of bullets we expected, but the spray of pine needles blasting in a strong, sudden gale. It catches Titan head-on, tossing him off the wrecked transport. He rolls onto the road, head smacking against the pavement. He stumbles to a knee, then falls, oddly off balance. I throw up an arm to protect my eyes and drop to a knee as needles scratch my exposed skin. Where they land, roots and trunks burst forth in curling, living explosions. The hawkway cracks and transports heave, tossed by the force growing before our eyes. My transport shifts with the road, and I fight to keep upright, bracing against the wrecked transport at my back. Tiberius reacts without thinking. He tosses a fireball, charring the pines sprouting up around us as fast as they can grow. The ash swirls in the growing wind, obscuring the road lights, making my eyes water. The air shudders with the sound of crushing metal and shattering glass. Evangeline and her crew are done wasting time. They flatten the wrecks that remain in the way, reducing them to solid puddles of iron and steel. The transport that still work roar, revving their engines as they lurch forward, fighting over pulsing roots and rippling branches. Evangeline leaps through the smoky air, climbing up onto a transport frame. Gunshots rain out, but the bullets fall to the wayside, tossed off by her ability. Blue shields spring to life on either side of the hawkway, tall and ethereal against the smoke and ash. Davidson controls each one with an outthrust fist. More shots sound, rippling over the shield. They can't penetrate. The guns can't reach us. Titan! I scream, looking for the Electrocon. Titan, kill them! He hoists himself to his feet, teetering as he wags his head back and forth, trying to shake away the daze. Using nearest transport, he props himself up, leaning heavily. Give me a second, he yells back, shaking his head again. We still can't see the raiders, safe from their nests in the trees. There have to be green wardens, at least. Tiberius's flames spread across the surge of pines on the road, twisting like a snake, attempting to devour each new tree as it sprouts. His lordling guards run between the trunks, laying hands on each. They explode at their touch, splintering in clouds of bark and blooming fire. Get on the transports! Davidson roars over the chaos. He still holds the shields, defending us from a hail of bullets. We have to get off the mountain! I suck in a deep breath, steeling myself. Focused. In the dark, I can't see the clouds gathering overhead, but I can feel them. Storm clouds, thunderheads, growing at my command, ready to strike. Someone pulls Titan onto the approaching transport, buckling him in. On the road, Tiberius directs his inferno through the lethal forest, trying to trap us on the cliff or push us off it. The rest of our detachment does their best to dodge the trees or destroy them, clearing the way for the transports and our escape. My heart thunders against my ribcage, adrenaline charging in my blood. It rises until I feel like I might burst. I take one more breath, deeper than before, and raise my hands, palms flat. My storm breaks overhead, twin bolts of lightning shuddering down into the trees on either side of the hawkway. The pines crack, embers flare, trunks slide and lean forward before crashing into the underbrush. Fire springs up among the boughs, small at first, then gigantic, fueled by the strength of a Calor prince. The bullets on our left stop long enough for Davidson to drop one shield and clamber onto the transport behind Evangeline's. The 6 vehicles bristle with soldiers, familiar and unfamiliar. In their black suits they look like bugs, crowding for space on a stone in the middle of a churning river. Titan hangs off the side of Evangeline's transport, one arm looped through a set of straps. As they drive past Tiberius, still fighting, Titan extends a hand. The prince takes it without question, swinging up onto the transport with ease. I'm next. I land hard, tucked between Tiberius and Titan, with Evangeline right above us. She fuses her metal boots to the body of the transport, which allows her to stand on with confidence despite our growing speed. She clenches a fist, clearing the last wreck out of our way, slamming it against the cliffside. Glass sprays the air like jagged rain. Davidson's final shield drops, shifting from the trees ahead to the lead transport. But in that brief second, another storm of bullets peppers our convoy. A few hit dangerously close, pinging off the metal by my head. Adrenaline eats my fear. I focus on keeping my grip on the transport, fingers tight on makeshift handholds, my body pressed against the cold steel. Flame chases alongside us, flanking the cliff edge of the transport. Tiberius keeps hold of it, dragging the swirl of fire with us, charring anything in our path. We scream over the road, taking the switchbacks with blinding speed. More in the trees, Titan growls, his teeth gritted against the wind. He squints into the darkness, his eyes narrowing into slits. I know what he's doing, even if I can't do it myself. Titan reaches out to the brains, feeling them as I feel the storm. He blinks once, twice, killing anyone within his reach, leveling them with a fury of electricity in their skulls. I imagine raiders dropping to the forest floor, their bodies twitching through a deadly seizure before finally lying still. I rain lightning into the pines, more bolts striking through trunks and branches. The blinding flashes illuminate the forest for a moment, enough to see the silhouettes of falling trees and fleeing figures, a dozen at least. Excuse me. The hawkway levels for the last mile as we leave the sharp corners and cliffs behind. The transports roar beneath us, eating up the straightaway in a mad race to the foot of the mountain. Fire and storm run with us, 2 guardians on deadly wings. More engines flare on the edge of my awareness, not as strong as the transports, but just as fast, and moving toward us with furious speed. The first cycle snarls out of the tree line, its single headlight blinding. The raider on it is small, with spindly limbs, armor, and goggles. He's also boldly stupid, driving the cycle up and off a boulder, sending himself arcing over the road. Above me, Evangeline slices her hand through the air. The cycle shreds at her command, spokes and pipes peeling apart. But she isn't the only magnetron here. The raider keeps his seat, and the cycle knits back together beneath his body, continuing its leap over the hood of the transport. As he goes, he tosses something. The steel glints in the dim light, fast as any bullet. Knives sail through the air, their razor edges cutting the wind. We duck together, Tiberius, Titan, and I. One grazes my shoulder. The suit saves me from the worst of it, but I still feel the sting. I bite my lip hard, forcing back a yelp of pain. Excuse me. The cycling raider hits the other side of the road hard, wheels skidding through the dirt as he circles to make another pass. Instead, he crunches into a thin blue wall, the cycle crumpling beneath him as he falls backward, gushing blood. Davidson moves the shields with us, trying to block the other cycles spitting out of the trees. Some of the riders drop, their bodies spasming as Titan takes hold of them. The rest of our focus is on getting onto the plain, onto the open, to the outpost, our reinforcements, and safety. Excuse me. The Montfort New Bloods defend the convoy, pushing back the raider attacks with everything they have. Tiberius's fire spreads through the trees, the ash falling around us like snow, coating us in white and gray. I let my lightning crack across the sky, the sound and force of it enough to send the raiders scurrying back into the trees. In the darkness, it's hard to discern their shadows. They don't look like the silvers I'm used to, in fine robes, polished armor, and gleaming jewels. They don't even have the neat severity of training suits and uniforms. These silvers are different. Their clothes are patchwork. Their weapons and gear mismatched. I'm reminded, more than anything, of the Scarlet Guard and the scraps of red. Excuse me. United by only a color and a cause. The cycles disappear into the smoky underbrush, their headlights bobbing and weaving out of sight. I reach for the engines, trying to grab hold before they pass beyond my grasp. But another rumble makes me pause, a pounding thrum lurching close. I can feel it in my teeth. Monsters burst from the ash, their shaggy heads massive, horns lowered, hooves stamping. Dozens of them, snoring and braying in hulking ranks. The stampede pummels into the convoy, knocking over each transport even as they meet bullets and fire and lightning and knives. These monsters are too strong, too strange. Their hides thick, muscles thicker, with bone-like living armor. I watch one catch a bullet in the forehead and keep on ramming, horns tearing through the metal like paper. I barely have the wherewithal to scream. By the way, if anyone's wondering what this is, it's a bison. Our transport tips beneath us, knocked off the dirt road by the monstrous charge. We topple with it. I hit the dirt hard and taste blood. Someone holds me down, their hand on my neck. Through my hair, I glimpse the transport as it sails over us. Evangeline is silhouetted against the sight, arms outstretched, fists clenched. She swings, using the transport like a battering ram. She tosses it into the stampeding herd of fearsome creatures. They circle and charge again, their eyes wide and furious, clearly under the control of a silver animus. Oh, good. I scramble up, using Tiberius's arm to leverage my weight and get back on my feet. Some yards away, Farley fires her gun from a knee. Her bullets have no effect on the beasts as they run, closing the distance quickly. Gritting my teeth, I toss and spread, weaving purple-white lightning across their path. The beasts rear in terror, still animals despite whoever's controlling them. A few attempt to run through. They scream in pain, collapsing in heaps of twitching hide and tossing horns. I try to ignore the terrible sound and narrow my eyes, squinting through the semi-darkness as fear gives way to instinct. My movements come without thought. Every step and sweep of my arms immediate. In my focus, I almost don't notice the creeping sensation, the heavy weight falling around my shoulders. The press is gentle at first, easy to mistake for exhaustion, but my lightning wanes, not as bright as before, not as easy to control. It flickers, sparking weakly as I brush aside another raider. He falls but gets back up quickly, a fist clenched in my direction. The force visibility sends me to my knees, and I lose all sensation of electricity, like a candle snuffed out, unable to spark and burn. I can't breathe. I can't think. I can't fight. Silence, a voice in me screams. A familiar pain and familiar fear level me again, bending me over. My useless hands hit the dirt, brushing against the cold earth. I grasp weakly, barely able to move, let alone defend myself. Fear sends me spiraling, my vision going black for a second. I feel manacles again, silent stone around my wrists and ankles, keeping me prisoner behind a locked door, chaining me to a false king, dooming me to a life of a slow, wasting death. The silver stalks toward me, his footsteps thunderous in my ears. I hear the scene of rasping metal as he draws a knife, intending to make quick work of my throat. It flashes in the night, reflecting the flames with a red sheen. He grins at me, his face bloodless and white as he grabs my hair, forcing my head back. I want to fight him. I should reach for the gun at my hip, still holstered, but my limbs won't move. Even my heartbeat feels sluggish. I can't even scream. The combination of crushing silence and fear keeps me still. All I can do is watch. The blade edges my skin, almost burning me with its cold. He leers down at me, his hair greasy beneath the scarf wrapped around his forehead. I can't tell what color the fabric is, if it means anything. A useless thing to wonder right now. Then his face explodes. Shards of bone and torn flesh arc forward. His body follows the momentum, slumping over me. And then the thunderous touch of electricity returns as quickly as he falls. I scramble, unthinking, sliding out from under the silence's corpse even as his warm blood and splintered teeth catch in my hair. Someone grabs me beneath the arm, dragging me through the dirt. I let them, still in shock, still paralyzed by fear, unable to do much more than kick Wiggly at the ground. In the distance, Farley watches me with a murderous expression, her pistol still raised and aimed at a man already dead. "It's me," a deep voice says, lying me back down some yards away, or rather letting me drop. Tiberius stands back, his eyes wide and almost glowing in the dim light. His breath comes in quick puffs as he looks me over. "Stand up," I tell myself. "Get back on your feet." If only I could. If only the memory of Soundstone were so easy to brush off. Slowly, I brushed my hands together, calling sparks to my skin. I have to see them. I have to know they aren't gone again. Then I touched my throat, my fingers coming away slick with my own blood. Tiberius watches in silence, unblinking. I stare back until he turns away, putting reluctant distance between us. When I get my bearings, I realize I'm somewhat defended. He dumped me next to the transports, using the wrecks for cover. All around me, soldiers of Montfort reform along the line. Davidson stalks among them, a streak of blood across his face. He looks disgusted with himself, and with the raiders. Shaky, I climb to my feet, using the hulking vehicle above me for support. The battle still rages before us, and the monstrous beasts snort and stamp, at odds with their own nature and their silver masters. A net of white lightning forms ahead of them, like a fence to hold them back. They toss their heads at the display, frightened beyond sense. I know the feeling. Poor things, I hear Titan mutter as he stops next to me. He stares at the beast, strangely forlorn. When one tries to charge, he blinks, and it drops, its massive body crumbling. The raiders return for another pass, their cycles snarling and leaping through the thinning trees. Evangeline and her cousins do battle with the other magnetrons, wrestling for dominance over the cycles. One hand on my chest, nails clenching at my suit. I try to grab hold of a cycle as it leaps over the road. Glaring, I trace the lines of electricity into its engine. With a great push of resolve, I feel them die in quick succession. A sudden burst, and then nothing. The rider twists, startled, as his machine fails. Breathing hard, I do the same to the next. They fall one by one, either coasting to a stop or toppling in midair. Our own soldiers descend on the raiders. They must have orders to capture, not kill. Davidson himself imprisons one in a cage of shields, letting the raider pound uselessly at his blue prison. Evangeline pursues one of the small raider magnetrons, running him down over the dirt. He tries to duel her, swirling twin blades that bleed between sword and hip. She is faster and more deadly. His swords are no match for her knives as they pepper his skin, his ability too strong for him to overcome. Evangeline Samos owes no allegiance to Davidson, and she doesn't have his mercy. She cuts the raider apart, letting him bleed silver beneath the starlight. Between the blood and the ash, the low foothills smell and taste like death. I gulp down the wretched air anyway, trying to catch my breath. The remaining raiders know the battle is lost. Their engines begin to ebb away, attempting to escape into the wilderness. As they disappear, so does their influence, and the herd of beasts calm. They turn, charging away into the forest, leaving only corpses and trampled underbrush behind. "Was that what you call a bison?" I pant, glancing at Davidson. He nods grimly, and I swallow around the irony. I can still feel the bison's steak in my stomach, heavy as a stone. In the distance, some ways down the road, headlights flare out of the plain. I clench a fist, tensing for a second wave. But Titan puts a hand on my arm. He looks down at me with flashing eyes. It's the Golden Grove transports, reinforcements. Relief floods me, and I drop my shoulders, exhaling. The movement sends a twinge through the cut on my back. I hiss, wincing, and put up a hand to feel the damage. The gash is long, but not so deep. A few yards away, Tiberius watches me take stock of my wounds. He jumps when I meet his gaze and spins on his heel. I'll get you a healer, he mutters, stalking off. If you're done crying over paper cuts, I could use some help. Still on the ground, Farley gestures with one hand, her teeth clenched together. Her gun lies in the dirt, surrounded by spent bullet casings. One of them saved my life. She leans to the one side, careful not to move her right leg, because her knee is wrong. My vision swims for a second. I've seen many forms of injury, but the way her knee twists, the lower half of her leg out of position, something about it turns my stomach. I immediately forget the ache in my own muscles, the blood on my shoulder, even the touch of silence, and rush to her side. Don't move, I hear myself say. No shit, she growls back, her hands tight on mine. Excuse me. We are now on chapter 10 with Iris. The mountains are steep and perilous, guarding the valley cities from siege or an army's onslaught. The thick pines make for dangerous obstacles to any transport that dares to turn them off their defended roadways. And the elevation alone is a deterrent, weakening any who might hope to climb their way up into the city's jaws. They think themselves safe in their fortress of cliff and sky. They see no danger, for no army could hope to march to their door. But we are often made weak by what also makes us strong. Montfort is no exception. We land to the east outside their borders, well within the bounds of prairie. Our drop jet is unmarked, freshly painted in prairie gold for appearance sake. Excuse me. It blends well with the tall grass as it sways like waves beneath the morning light. No one notices our arrival on the distant plains. We flew carefully, first through the wilds of the lakelands before crossing the open and empty landscape. The prairie lords are far-flung, their lands too vast and sprawling to patrol properly, and they are preoccupied with their own doings. They don't know we crossed their lands. No one knows we're here, except the raiders, of course. Their involvement is necessary to lure as many as we can out of Ascendant. With any luck, Tiberius Chlor will be one of them. According to Maven, his brother would never pass up an opportunity to fight. To show off, he added, scowling at the idea when we discussed this. I don't know the exiled prince. I've never met Tiberius Chlor, but the Lakelands is not a blind country. We collected intelligence on him and all the royal family. They were our enemies for more than a century, after all. The reports revealed an altogether predictable prince, raised to be a military leader like his father, hammered by duty and expectation, formed into a person who values the crown above all else. The brothers have that in common, I think, along with a very peculiar red girl. I have to agree with Maven's assessment. If Tiberius really is here to bargain with Montfort, to strengthen their alliance, he will certainly try to prove himself and win their loyalty. What better way than to fight for them? The raiders meet us at the agreed-upon location, a rise allowing full view of the surrounding landscape. They are masked and veiled, sitting astride smoke-spitting, old-fashioned cycles with even their eyes obscured by riding goggles. Silvers, all of them, exiled from their own lands when the mountain kingdoms fell, stripped of their own birthrights as lords and rulers. They outnumber us, but I feel little fear. I am a warrior by birth, bred by the strongest nymphs in my kingdom, and my 5 escorts are just the same. Strong, noble, and useful. Gidanza is still with me, eager to serve as well as protect. She's careful to position herself between me and any raider who might come too close. I keep my head down, my own face shadowed. The raiders are an isolated kind, and they probably wouldn't know a princess of the Lakelands or the Queen of Norda on sight. But it's best this way. The others speak for me, going over the arrangement. Our team of 6 is easy to transport, each of us clinging to one of the raiders as they ferry us across the plain. They know this land better than any of us, and we don't even need to use our shadow of House Haven to hide our journey. Not yet. The mountains in the distance loom closer with every passing second. They look more like a wall than any mountains I've ever seen. Fear tries to eat at my resolve, but I don't let it. Instead, I narrow my eyes and sharpen my focus on the task at hand, leaving little room for anything else. As the hours bleed together, I run over the plan in my head, each obstacle to be surmounted. Cross the border. That is done easily. The raiders know their paths and they know Montfort's blind spots. They follow a stream through tight, dense pine forest, and only when we start climbing into the foothills do I realize we're on the other side of the invisible dividing line between Prairie and Montfort. Pay for your passage. The string of jewels is mine. Sapphire, silver, and diamond. I hand them over at gunpoint. Our Haven Shadow, a young, stocky sentinel on loan from my royal husband, gives up the more valuable piece of the bargain. His own house is split, torn in two by the civil war erupting across Norda. The head of the house fights for Tiberius, but the majority of his kin remains at Maven's side. An admirable thing, to be loyal to country and king over family, even if that king is Maven Calor. He doesn't wear his sentinel mask, leaving the black jewel tradition behind. Without it, he seems human. Blue eyes, red hair gleaming in the sunlight. Sentinel Haven gives the riders the location of our resource drop some miles north. Crates of food, coin, batteries, as well as arms and ammunition to feed their endeavors. The riders waste no time leaving us on the eastern mountainside, as high as they could ride. I never see their faces, but at least one has blonde hair, a few strands of it, visible beneath his wrapped head coverings. Climb. The waterfalls are simple enough. They act as moving ladders, and I use the water to pull us up and over a great many cliffs. I eventually lose count of them. We follow the stream backward, against the current, with little difficulty. Between my ability and that of another nymph, Laren of the Norton House Osanos, all 6 of us managed to get into the high valley, as the stars prick to life overhead. Still, the way is rough. The air thins, and my breathing turns shallow, making my steps harder with every inch of the ascent. But I am no stranger to physical exertion. I trained at Citadel of the Lakes from childhood. The Haven man keeps his hands free, fingers twitching now and then. He blankets us in invisibility, allowing us to move through the pines unseen. It's an odd thing, to look down at your own feet and see nothing but the underbrush, but at least I don't have to look at Rydell, the Rambo strong-arm. On the way up, his bulk was distorted by 2 bodies strapped across his shoulders like a pack. Another part of my own plan. A bloody part. Again, I push away a shiver of fear. We begin our climb farther north of the city, forcing us to cut back south to reach the river. It is dammed downstream, in the valley where Sendent lies, creating a crooked lake. I feel some weight lift when we reach the water, its banks quiet and empty. Together, the 6 of us descend beneath its surface, leaving no trace of ourselves behind. I turn my attentions on the current, creating a channel of flowing water along the riverbed. Laren does as we plan. Bubbles form around our heads, giving each of us a shield of breathable air. It's an old nymph trick, something a child could do, and so we pass in secret along the waterways, riding the current through the turns of the valley. It's almost pitch black, but I trust the water. The last miles pass in forced silence, filled only with the sound of my own breathing and my own pounding heartbeat. The Ascendant City Lake is deep and full of fish. Once or twice, I jump at the brush of scales in darkness as we navigate to the edge of the water. I shrug off the sensation, focusing on the next of my plan. Several fine estates have docks on the lake, and we use them as cover. I surface first, raising my eyes just above the waterline. After hours in the wilderness and underwater, even the soft lights of the city are glaring. I don't blink or flinch. I force my eyesight to adjust as quickly as I can. We have a schedule to keep. No alarms yet. No warning signals. Good. Sentinel Haven shrouds us again as we leave the water, but even he can't hide the wet footprints that trail us through the valley. That is left to Laren and me. We wring ourselves dry with a few twists, using our ability to squeeze every drop out. I condense the resulting puddles, casting away the floating orbs of water into the nearest plant or gutter, leaving no trace. I spent the flight to Prairie memorizing the layout of Ascendant, using the map from Bracken. It unsettles me to know how so much of my plan is built on someone else's work. I have to trust the information I was given, even if one wrong piece could mean failure. Though the Montfort capital is confusing, a jagged network of streets and steps along both sides of the valley floor, I was able to trace the quickest route from the dammed lake up to where Bracken's children are being held. Not in the palace, according to the Piedmont spies, but in an observatory. For the safety of a dark and silent alleyway, I glance up the step slopes to the domed building high on the mountainside. My legs shudder at the thought of climbing another few thousand feet, but I push forward without a sound, schooling my breath to a low, even pace. In through the nose, out through the mouth, in tandem with my steps. Excuse me. The strong arm has little trouble with the stairs, despite the extra weight of his cargo, and the Haven Sentinel is better trained than any of us, raised to defend the king and his family. He is in his prime physical form. The same can be said of Laren. I am loath to trust in Norton, let alone 3 at my side, but it can't be helped, and even representation was required for politics' sake. Gidanza is the only companion I trust completely. The other Lakelander with us sets my teeth on edge. I love Nero of the Iscariol line. Eskarriol. But we need him and his talents. He's a skin healer. A strange one. A person gifted with the ability to save life should not enjoy taking it as much as he does. I can hear him breathing, inhaling and exhaling rapidly as we ascend. Though I'm glad to have a healer as talented as he is at our backs, I wish he weren't necessary. Nero takes too much delight in what he must do before the night is done. With luck, they won't be noticed until midday. My work will be perfect. Oh, he whispers. My work will be perfect. His voice is smooth, silken. Nero comes from a long line of diplomats just as adept at healing political alliances as they are at fixing broken bones. Keep silent, I murmur back at him. The ghost of his presence is somehow colder than the mountain air. Ascendant is not undefended. Guard posts and patrols dot the way, though far less than I've seen in the Lakelands or the Norton capital. These foolish Montfortans think their mountains and their secrets are enough to keep them safe. I glance over my shoulder, at the other side of the valley. I feel the swish of my black braid, but can't see it. What must be the Premier's palace sprawls across the height above us, with other estates and government buildings lining its edges. It gleams white in the starlight, with many lights glowing from the balconies, windows, and terraces. Mare Barrow is in there, the lightning girl with a knack for survival. I thought her a delightful curiosity in Archeon. The red girl leashed to a silver king who seemed just as trapped by her as she was by him. I won't pretend to understand why she bewitches Maven in such a way. Excuse me. But it must be his mother's doing. No person of sound mind carries such obsession, and it cannot be love. No person capable of love acts the way he does. I never thought I would marry for love. I'm not naive enough to say such daydreams. My parents grew to love and respect each other through their arrangement, and I hope for that at least. Of course, Maven makes the hope impossible. I've only had small glimpses into his heart, and they are enough to know that his heart is dead. If the Bracken children were not our objective, if I actually hoped to maintain my Norton crown, I might entertain the idea of killing Mare Barrow. Not for spite, but to hopefully give Maven some clarity. She is a motivation now, a carrot for him to follow, but she is a weakness too, and I need him weak. I need him distracted. As Mother said, Maven Galore will face the flood. They all will. The military contingent left 10 minutes ago. Their transport screaming up the mountain. I can still hear the echoes coming down the slope, reverberating through the streets and alleys of the Montfort capital. The rest of the city clangs with alarm bells and warning signals, just as planned. I blink, still shrouded in Sentinel Haven's impenetrable shadow. The observatory guards abandon their post to assist the city, leaving behind a skeleton shift of 2 Montfort soldiers. That night, their green uniforms seem black. They stand out against the polished moonstone columns, holding up the spangled dome of stained glass. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on in my throat. Without a signal or a whisper to wipe their memories of both guards, we have no choice but to slip by them instead. It isn't difficult, but I hold my breath as we do, weaving through the observatory columns. They flank their entrance, still and steady, accustomed to the clanging alarms. Raider attacks are common, I'm told, and of little threat to the capital. On the plain, one says to the other, turning his face. His compatriot shakes her head. On the slopes, they hit the plains twice last month. The middle guard grins, shoving his hand into his pocket. Plain. Bet you 10 coppers. Don't you get tired of losing your money to me? She replies. As they laugh, grins wide, I press my hand to the lock on the door, or of the door. With my other hand, I flick open the canteen holstered at my hip, or my side. Under Sentinel Haven's power, I can't see what I'm doing, so I must rely on touch. It complicates things, but only enough to slow me down. The water swirls around my wrist, kissing my skin, before warming between my fingers and into the keyhole. It fits into the mechanism, filling the space as I exhale. Through the water, I press on the tumblers of the lock, touching for each one, forming a key of my own making. I nudge sideways with my foot, reaching for Gidanza. She nudges back. Some yards away, a tree branch cracks under her ability, crashing to the paved stone, perfectly masking the sound of a turning lock. Raiders in the city? the female guard says. Her laughter replaced by panic. No bet, the man responds. They rush to investigate, leaving us to slip into the observatory undetected. Unseen. Unlooked for. Weary of any kind of security camera, Sentinel Haven keeps us shrouded as we enter. Laren, through, whispers the Norton nymph. We sound off in turn, unable to see one another. Gidanza, Rydell, Nero, Iris. Delos, says the Haven Sentinel. Grinning, I ease the door shut behind us. Infiltrate the observatory prison. Done. I don't allow myself a sigh of relief. That won't come until I'm on the ground at home, with Bracken's children safely returned. And even that is premature. As Mother would say, no use sleeping while there are wars to be won. And we certainly have a war exploding around us. Gidanza's footstep echoes slightly as she rounds the room. Her search takes several long minutes, enough to put us on edge. The tension ratchets with the passing seconds, until she returns. I can hear the smile in her voice. They're truly foolish, she says. No cameras. Not one. Excuse me. How can that be? I hear Laren mutter. My teeth grit together. Perhaps they don't want a record of the children being here. I reply, given the only explanation I can think of. It shouldn't affect me. Horrible things are done in a war, even to Silvers. I know that firsthand. Or what they've done to them. The realization settles over us. Another current of dread upon the pile. I raise my chin, smoothing my unseen hair, tucking pieces behind my ears. Sentinel Haven, you may cease. Yes, Your Majesty. I can hear him bow, and then I see it. We bleed into vision, all of us at once, as if a window has suddenly been wiped clean. Most look at their own limbs, examining themselves, but Nero is staring at me. He looks paler in the dim light, flittering through the glass dome, which dapples his face in sickly green. His gaze feels like a challenge or perhaps amusement. I dislike either option. This way, I tell them, focusing on the task at hand. They fall into line, even Nero, and I'm glad to have Gidanza on my heels. The Sentinel, too. I am the Queen of Norda, and he has sworn to protect me as well as Maven. We round a massive telescope, pointed at the domed roof, made of tubes of brass and glass fixtures. A waste, I think. The stars are well beyond the reach of anyone, even Silvers. They are the realm of gods and gods alone. Excuse me. Excuse me. They are not for us to fathom. To try is to squander time, resources, and energy. Several chambers lead off the round central room, but we ignore them. Instead, I cross the floor, searching the marble beneath my feet for visible cracks. I don't expect any, and loose the canteen again. With a nod at Laren, I have him do the same. Our water spreads across our feet and across the marble, expanding into the thinnest of cupboards. It prods and puddles over the stone, working into grooves and seams between the slabs. Here, Laren says, taking a few steps toward the wall. His own water bunches up like a giant droplet. As I approach, squinting, I can see tiny air bubbles trailing up through the water. There is an open space below. Excuse me. Gidanza makes quick work of the slab, drawing it up and out of place with a wave of her fingers. Beneath, darkness looms, but not blackness. There are lights in the chamber below the observatory, somewhere farther down the passage, enough to see by, but not to lead through the tiny seams of the trapdoor slab. Stairs lead downward, as if beckoning. Rydell goes first, according to our plan, with Nero behind, one hand on his holstered gun should Rydell meet opposition. Sentinel Haven follows. I notice that his hands seem to darken, pooling with shadow like curling smoke. I keep close on his heels, with Gidanza at my side and Laren bringing up the rear. This is the easy part, I tell myself, and I'm right. The passage curves, tracking below the observatory and beyond its bounds. There are no guards, no cameras, nothing but the dim lights and the echo of our own feet. I wonder if this place was made specifically for Prince Bracken's children. Somehow I doubt it. The stone is old, though the walls are freshly painted the warm color of butter. It has an uncommon effect. I wouldn't expect for enemy prisoners. The Montfortans are strange indeed. About 100 yards on, the passage widens into some kind of receiving chamber walled by a bank of windows. I balk at them, looking out into the glimmer of the city. The windows must be thick, because I can't hear any alarms, though see the lights of them flashing up and down ascendant. I exchange a confused glance of Chidanza, who looks just as puzzled as I feel. She shrugs and jerks her chin to the right, where the chamber dead ends at a single door. It is unremarkable, not even reinforced that I can see. When I lay my palm against the lock, intending to key it open, I realize why. Silent stone, I hiss, drawing back as if burned. Just a distant ache of the ability-smothering weapon makes my skin crawl. Torturous bastards. Chidanza makes a disgusted sound deep in her throat. Those poor children. It's been months. The others echo her sentiment. All but one. Bad for them, good for us, Nero says, without any kind of sympathy. I round on him, sneering. What's that supposed to mean? I growl. Silent stone will have made them lethargic, sleepy. No one will notice when these two don't move in the morning, he says, poking at the covered bulk on Rydell's back. His fingers tap against human flesh with little regard. Right as he may be, I still scowl. Let's get them out, I say, stabbing my fingers. Sentinel Haven, your assistance, please. And Nero, be ready to heal them. They'll need it. I know what a prison of silent stone does to a person. I saw it firsthand in Barrow. Her sunken cheeks and dull eyes, the way her bones jutted, her cold skin veined with sickness. And she was a stubborn hellion, feeding on fury to keep herself sane, with a cause to hold on to, albeit a foolish, doomed one. Where'd it go? Oh. Prince Bracken's children are young, only 10 and 8 years old. Silver's born, reliant on their ability, with no memory of life without. I don't want to know what the Silent Stone has done to them, but I have no choice. I must look into the face of war's horrors and never blink. My father did not. My mother and sister did not. I have to keep my eyes open if I can ever hope to win. Win and go home. Laren opens the store, using his own canteen to form a watery key. It takes him a bit longer, battling the edges of silent stone. Finally, he swings open the door and steps back, allowing me to enter first. I shudder as I step inside, steeling myself against the unnatural sensation. It's more uniform than fighting with the silence. Their abilities pulse with their hearts and concentration. This is constant, unyielding. I swallow hard against the ugly, unnatural sensation. In spite of my team at my back, waiting in the blissful safety of the passage, I feel more vulnerable than ever. A newborn baby exposed on a cliff. The children sleep soundly, each one tucked into a nicely made bed. I glance around, expecting some kind of guard in the shadows. There's nothing but the dim silhouettes of a well-furnished room and curtained windows. As in the passage, they look out through the pines and down to the silly valley. Another torture, to see the world beyond your reach. Help me carry them out, I mutter, eager to be rid of this place. I reach for the dark-haired child in the bed closest to me, putting a hand to her face, ready to clamp my fingers over her mouth, should she scream. Bracken's daughter shifts at my touch, but doesn't wake. In the dim light, her skin is the color of polished jet. Wake up, Charlotta, I murmur. My heartbeat doubles. We need to go. Sentinel Haven is not so ready with Prince Michael. He slides one arm behind his shoulders and another under his knees before scooping him up. Like his sister, the boy is slow to wake. Groggy, sluggish. The silent stone has wreaked its havoc upon them both. Who? The boy mumbles, his eyes fluttering open and shut. Beneath me, his sister stirs. Roused, I shake her shoulders gently. She blinks up at me, brows knitting in confusion. Is it time for a walk? She asks, her voice high and breathy. We won't fuss. Promise. Yes, I tell her quickly, seizing the opportunity. We're going to go for a walk away from the stone, but you both have to be very quiet and do exactly as we say. It isn't a lie, and Em dresses both of them as much as possible. Charlotta even wraps her arms around my neck, allowing me to lift her. She's lighter than I expected, more like a bird than a girl. She smells fresh, clean. I would think the children well treated if not for the silent stone. Excuse me. Michael curls in Sentinel Haven's arms. You're new, he says up to the Sentinel. I can't get out of the room fast enough, and I suck in a healing breath as we step back into the passage. The children both exhale, and Charlotta relaxes in my arms. Remember, do as we say. I mumble, averting my eyes from what Rydell and Nero half prepared. The boy nods, wordless, but the girl looks up at me with a keen glance I wouldn't expect from a child. Are you rescuing us? She whispers. I see no reason to lie. The words stick anyway, because I might fail. I might get them killed. I might die in this attempt. Yes, I force out. Let me see them. Nero wastes no time, flashing a light in both their faces that startles even me. Quiet, I murmur when Michael yelps. I glare at Nero over the girl's head, but he ignores me, turning his focus on them. His eyes dart back and forth like some kind of ticking machine as he memorizes their features. When he turns back to the bundle on the ground, I can't look away fast enough. Still, I catch the sight of them. The two little red bodies. They are still breathing, heavily drugged, already too far gone to wake up without aid, but still breathing. Nero needs living flesh to do his work. Sentinel Haven catches my eye, and he turns as I do, putting his back to the skin healer and the Reds. We can't let the children see what is being done for them, and we don't want to watch it happen. Weakness, something whispers in me when I flinch at the sound of a blade seen out of its sheath. Keep your eyes open, your eyes signet. Such artistry, I hear Nero tell himself, his voice wolfish and full of glee. His work is mostly silent. Mostly. And that is chapters 9 and 10 of War Storm. Whew! There was a whole lot to process in that moment. So we had a moment where they were fighting some of the raiders. We got to see that. We got to see the mayor experience the bison and figure out what it was. And then in chapter 10, Iris rescued the children. They were rescuing the children. So, woohoo, there's that. Yay. Even if it's like the whole bargaining chip thing, it's still nice to know that they're rescued. You know, that's just how I am when I think of it. But, yeah, that is chapters 9 and 10. I don't really think I have too much more to add on to that, in all honesty. I do think I want to add on that, like, when I mentioned that Tiberius is jealous, I think he really is definitely jealous, especially of Titan having gotten that close to Mare. And I love how, like, Titan just laughed off his comment. Like, he's like, he does not give a shit, you know? But I appreciate the fact that Cal also apologized to Mare about it, like, making the comment she made about biting, or he made about biting, which, I mean, like, I have to agree with, like, Mare's point of, like, anyone can eyes of see what's going on, you know, can you see it, you know, and everything, but, yeah, so, anyway, that was Warstorm chapters 9 and 10. Thank you guys so very much for watching. I hope you all very thoroughly enjoyed, and I will see you all in my next video. Mwah!